any of the habitat for those species. He also indicated that there is no wetlands on site. One thing that did show up as part of the initial subdivision was that there was wetlands, but after having the biologists out there and reviewing the past documentations, that does not affect our project site whatsoever. Other than that, I feel like we've pretty sufficiently addressed most of Planner Warner's comments, and that there's nothing really substantive or major that would hold up a circulation to involved agencies for the planning board's request for lead agency. With that, happy to answer any questions or comments.
Okay, so we can see now the latest site plan that you have here. All right, so again, 4 parcels. Each parcel has 2 buildings. Each building has 2 units. Each unit will have 2 cats. Each cat will have 2 mice. Okay. So we're looking at a total of 16 units, correct? Okay.
Correct.
So one of the things that did come up was about this is part of a larger subdivision, and we needed some evidence that that all the rights that were afforded to the subdivision in its entirety have not been in some way exhausted on those other parcels, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you have some way of showing us that other than just...
Yeah, so provided in the seeker narrative, if you flip to it, we actually have the original density calculations that the subdivision was based off of at the time it was created and approved by. And that was provided by, I believe, Insight. So from there, Paggi, Martin, and Delbeni. So from there, we use that as a justification for our density, having came in at, I believe that the density was significantly higher than what we originally came with. So yeah, the maximum density was established at 45 residential units. So that's what the flexible subdivision could have been done to create. Instead, there was only about 20 lots created from, yeah, it's on the original site plan and in the narrative. But essentially, what that allowed us to do is use the additional density that was factored in and established as part of that subdivision and use it to justify that there is sufficient density for the number of units we are proposing on these existing lots.
Okay. All right, and we see the elevations here. One of the things that came to mind is when it says right side, sorry, let me get the right tab here. Okay, front, rear is, I think, pretty obvious. Right side elevation, is that, you're looking at the front of the building, and so we're looking at the right side. But depending on the building, that same front would be the left side?
Yeah, right and left are the same elevation.
Okay. All right. And so there's no windows planned on
On the sides.
the sides of the building? Okay. Just in the basement?
Basically just give light to the basement. But if you look back at the original site plan, how the buildings are always going to be kind of next to each other but separated, you're essentially having windows looking into
Right. I understand why you might not want Unit 15C and Unit 15B to have windows facing each other. That could certainly be some privacy issues, but...
You got to remember, it's 2 units per se.
Sorry.
It's almost a flip mirror, so to not have them here and then put them here, it kind of looks funny in the unit layout. That's the whole reason behind it.
Okay.
The bedrooms have windows. I mean, they're relatively small building footprints in general, so you also want to give wall space inside the unit to put a bed against or a dresser against. So
Right. Okay. And one last thing. In lot 16, you have the septic field in a floodplain here.
Right. So These were the areas that were approved as part of the original subdivision. Key to it is that we're using the same field layout for the number of bedrooms. This will have to be adjusted slightly, and has to be looked at by the health department regardless. So that's gonna have to be tweaked to be out of the floodplain, or whatever the health department's recommendations are for that. So all of that we will provide as part of the approval. We'll provide you the septic approvals from the health department.
Okay. All right, I didn't have any other comments or questions at this time. I'll go through the planning board members. Member Sador? Member Palmer? Member LaRobediere?
No.
Okay, Member Valano?
Not at this time.
All right. I think we'll start with Planner Werner.
Sure. You can open up the copy of the memo. You covered a few of them, so I'll jump to some of the more critical comments. There's some comments up front about application materials. I think the applicant understands what we're asking for here. Let's go to, skip down to number 10. So for lot 15, if you want to pull that site plan back up. Lot 15 is the northern, the flag lot, the one that includes the end of the road and the
Right.
cul-de-sac. So per the code 14522C, on flag lots, front setbacks must be measured between the principal building and the edge of the private road rather than the center line of the road.
So we're looking at this?
Correct, yeah. So they're measuring the setback from the center of the cul-de-sac. I think we want to measure that from the edge of the cul-de-sac. And that's 40 feet that's required, so it might cause that building to have to move back a little bit, just based on the flag lot requirements. I think all the other setbacks that you've shown are fine. It's just the way the code reads for flag lots is more appropriate to meet that requirement, or else we're looking at, ZBA getting involved, so.
Yep. Yeah, we'll see.
And so again, as you see through it, all these setbacks are from the center line.
Right, which the
As
code
well.
allows, and there's precedent for that in the town to measure from the center line. It's just that this provision for
For flag
flag
lots.
lots doesn't specify that.
Easy enough to push it anyway.
Okay, number 11 was about the window question. The board does have architectural review board authority for this, so they've explained why they're not doing it. Obviously, the board can ask for that. It sounds like that's just going to have to be a comment response sort of approach there. Number 12, again, focusing on the flag lot, it wasn't clear if, for lot 15, if the flag and the driveway are both included in the impermeable surface calculations. We recommend that the entire lot and the driveway be included. And also a total for all of the lots would be good to have on the plan as well. And that's on the impermeable surface calculations. 13 was talking about the density calculation. We had our previous comments from February. As the applicant noted, they have a letter that was part of the 2003 approvals that described that there's 26 units that could still be built and 16 are proposed. So it looks to be in conformance with that. However, we could just ask a little more information. We understand that the applicant formerly owned all the lots in the subdivision, so if it's possible to confirm that none of those that have been built since that was approved include more than one unit on them. If that's something that the applicant can come back with, that would help reaffirm that finding. Next is 14, just on the parking lots and the parking calculation. So there's 16 units, there's spaces per unit required, so they're showing 32 throughout the whole project. They're showing the parking between the street and the buildings. Last meeting, we asked if it would be possible, and this comment memo has the comment in it, if it would be possible to maybe move the parking to the rear, so that, it's more attractive. You're looking at buildings rather than parking in front of buildings, but their response was that it would just create more impervious, more disturbance on the site. And right now, the reason that they're proposing it this way is to screen the residences from neighboring properties by having the parking between the units and neighboring properties. So, the board can ask for a different layout or more information. I think, this is the plan that they want to go with. They are gravel lots. They're only showing a few trees. Maybe it would be a good idea to explore adding some more screening trees around the parking so that from neighbors looking across out of their units, they're not just looking at parking. So maybe consider that, a little more screening vegetation. We also didn't notice any parking area lighting for each one of these little lots. Might be a good idea to have a pole-mounted light for safety purposes. Consider that. And the last meeting, we asked a question about EV chargers, if that was something that was being explored as something to be provided for tenants. I know it's rentals.
I was going to say, infrastructure's already in, going in all the way back there as far as power requirements.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't want to have to revisit doing that. And like you said, the rentals, that's a huge cost for really no gain.
Some of the meters you can work out and get, there are different programs for getting meters. You can get tax credits, and some of them will pay, the meter will be free as long as, the money goes directly to the person, like a lease.
When were the electrical lines installed?
Back when it was first subdivided.
Subdivided.
Yeah.
Okay.
Way back then.
Another option is having, if there's exterior outlets on the units, but it's kind of a long run from there to the parking, if someone wanted to run a charger themselves on their own dime.
I mean, that's something I would kind of explore on a tenant-to-tenant basis rather than putting provisions in that may never get used.
Okay. Just worth bringing up because it is, we're seeing more and more of these on residential projects, so. Let's see, scrolling down to, we talked about, number 16 was about the septic and the floodplain. I think, and you could talk to Joe, I think there was maybe an issue also with how the floodplain is being shown. He might not agree with the way that line is shown, and there's a possibility that it might not be in the floodplain.
I don't think it's in the floodplain. I think your surveyor put the floodplain, the surveyor pulled the floodplain from the real property map and didn't do it by elevation. He shows the sections on the map. You're supposed to connect the contours. And when I overlaid it with real property, what you have here is exactly what's from real property and not from elevations. And when I looked at the elevations you have, it pulls the floodplain further away, and all your structures are outside of it.
Yep. So we spoke with John Decker on that, had a back and forth on him, and he was pretty adamant on the location of both the contours and the floodplain. Again, that's something I could go back to him and reassess on that.
I tell him, okay,
Yeah.
I'll speak to him. Floodplains are elevations.
That's,
FEMA has determined that. I'm more than happy to send him the literature on it. He shows the cross-sections on here. And when cross-sections are provided, the flood is controlled by the cross-sections, not by the map that FEMA puts out as a guidance.
right. Yeah, I mean, that's in our benefit.
I'd be
for
more than
that.
happy to share the
That would be
literature
great.
on that if you want.
Yeah, that would be great, because again, we worked with John on this just to try to address your concerns, and then,
Okay, alternatively, move the septic.
Well, like we spoke earlier, it's more of a feasibility location until we get a little further along in this review process before we employ engineers to fine tune that.
Well, on lot number, on the one where the floodplain's in, you'd have to move the floodplain to where the houses are, so you'd probably lose a lot.
Well,
Okay.
I would just
yeah,
suggest that
again,
you
I
look
would
at
be
it.
great if maybe we could get a call with Decker on,
That's
or if you want to forward me the literature, I could send it to him.
sure, if he states that's where it is and he doesn't want to modify, I was just offering my opinion.
We
Yeah,
like
I'd
your
say-
opinion.
I mean, he
As a
can,
surveyor and an engineer.
however, as the town engineer, if this is the floodplain you're gonna hold, those septics have to be moved outside of it substantially.
Yeah.
So I'd say, consult together offline on that, and in addition to that, the stormwater questions that Joe might have, just work that out. All right, so moving down to number 20, about the wetlands, we did get confirmation from them that they used Mike Nowicki to confirm that the site, the boundaries of the lots are greater than 100 feet from wetlands. There is the river there, and we are in the stream corridor overlay, but there's not any development anywhere near the buffers for that, so, I think that issue is resolved. Same thing with the species. We had flags for cottontail, bog turtle, timber rattlesnake. They did have a report prepared by Mr. Nowicki that showed that based on the way the site's been disturbed, it was an ag field previously, before it was made into these lots. It has overgrown somewhat and that they haven't been developed, but for the most part, it's really not habitat, according to Mike's report. So archaeology was also addressed in the 2003 approvals, and nothing's changed on the site since then, so. Those issues that were identified in the memo about, on the seeker side, have been resolved. They submitted a full EAF, Part 1, which looked complete, has enough information in it and circulate, as well as the narrative that they supplied with that. So, we're recommending that the application, the site plan set, the EAF materials be circulated for seeker and can go to the county for GML 239M. That's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. Engineer Berger, you made some comments during that. Do you have anything further to add?
No, I assume you're gonna be coming up with these Chapter 65 and stormwater in future submissions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's about it.
Okay, thank you. Nothing to do with our geologist on this project, so we'll move on to our attorney.
I have some questions. We had asked for a copy of the road driveway easement.
Okay.
I would like to see that, and I want to ensure that it includes the right of the other lots, because remember, there are 4 different owners of this project, or 3 different owners, to install the utilities. You said that there is already an electrical line running down,
Yeah, primary array and transformer.
so, who owns that electrical line?
Uh,
Who has the
utility
right,
company.
so Central Hudson has an easement to bring their electrical line down to the transformer?
Yep.
Okay,
Not Central Hudson.
Well,
Nice.
nice, sorry.
NICEAG, sorry, okay.
You know,
So then, will each of these units be separately metered?
Yes,
Okay. And then mailboxes.
So each of the buildings will be metered, or each of the units will be metered?
unit.
Okay.
So each.
So it'll be 16 meters.
Simple math, yeah, it's 3 per building. So 1 for each tenant,
Mm-hmm.
landlord.
It's a lot of meters.
The landlord meter, if you could just explain for
Parking
everyone.
lot lights, anything that's outside of, we'll say 10%.
Okay,
Yeah, if
Sure, there'll be
there's,
a common laundry room,
Mhm.
type of deal, so.
okay,
right, if there's a pump for the well,
Yeah.
sure.
that to be on the landlord line
Right,
as well. And then mailboxes? Are you putting one central mailbox at the
No,
beginning?
buildings.
Each building will get its own mailbox? Okay,
Again, for simplicity of design, I know it's a 4-lot, 16 units, 8 buildings. Again, it's 4 individual micro projects, just all laid out as one, So we're trying to keep this very simple as a 2-family residential structure.
Mhm.
Not to blow it out, of course.
While talking about those level of details, we also tend to talk about, like where you would put, say, garbage collection. I don't know if you had gotten that far yet.
No, I mean, my initial thought was private garbage for each building, each lot, type of deal. Truck can come in there, pick it up, not necessarily a localized dumpster.
and something like snow storage at the end of the cul-de-sac, if it's not already in the easement, which lot gets stuck with all the snow?
We'll mark it out on the site plan.
Snow goes on lot 15, right?
Are you thinking like rollaway garbage containers
Yeah,
that would just be stored next to the buildings because there's no garages, right?
yeah.
And it's not really a legal comment, but I will tell you that in townhouse situations, the end units are always the most desirable because they have the extra windows. So your tenants may appreciate an extra window.
Again, I gotta go back, I know when I originally designed the buildings, you know, like we discussed earlier,
Mhm.
first looking at each other, the two side by side, was
Right.
the first red flag, and going from memory, as I got a lot of projects going on, it really killed the layout of the room. So again, you need uninterrupted wall space.
Even if you put like one window here and one window here on the other building, so they're not looking into each other's window.
But still, you know, it's,
Okay, just a thought.
yeah,
Just-
no, building guy, if you look at some of the houses I built in
Mhm.
Jordan Lane and what I've got going on over there, I will build them nice if I can, but there is limitations to it.
Right.
Just, you know, formal or funk, you
That
know.
reminds me, dude, we did ask for floor plans in the comments too. Is that something that you plan to share with the board?
Oh, and I just-
Because that'll help understand the layout. I mean, these aren't very large units, so I can understand the comment about floor space and wall space being constricted.
You know, just keep in mind, the building itself is 2 units on less than 2,000 square feet or something like that. for the manufacturing. So a single 2-story is 1,000 square feet or a little less, so.
Right.
By the time you throw a staircase in there, there's not a lot of space.
And except for the mirroring, every one of the units should be identical.
Yes, yep.
Okay.
So if you don't already have an existing driveway easement, then I'd like to review it before you finalize it, so we can make sure it addresses all the issues.
There's an existing easement on
Yeah.
the subdivision plat.
Well, it's, I know that on the
But-
plat, it says there's an easement, but I'm asking for the shared driveway easement and maintenance agreement that would have been filed with the county clerk.
Okay.
I know I've seen it when I bought the development, I bought this lot. You know, I can tell you that, yeah, it's lot, the big lot owns it, and they're all 25% partners in any fees or maintenance or anything. I remember reading that when I
Right.
bought
I just want to make sure it covers all the issues.
Yeah, that's.
Okay, thank you.
And just, yeah, because barring some kind of agreement that we may not be aware of, what's to prevent anyone who owns a lot from selling to anyone, and then whoever then owns it saying, well, you know, you can't do this, you can't put the snow here, you can't do, you know, that's, I think that's what our attorney's getting at, that right now, you or your partners collectively own everything, but, you know, 50 years from now,
No, it makes
probably
sense.
not, so.
I remember reading something, I don't remember anything that's snow, but outside of that, I know there's something there that was pretty good, I just,
Hmm.
I figured it off.
I mean, Joe will look at the stormwater to see if there needs to be any stormwater features that need to be commonly maintained as well.
Sure.
Or the door.
No, I mean, for the road.
No.
Okay, Attorney Polidoro, anything
It's a driveway.
That's it for me.
further?
It's a common driveway. I don't know, it's a driveway.
All right. All right, so back to Planner Warner, at the end of your
Sure.
memo.
Yeah, so tonight you
And
can
following?
classify as an unlisted seeker action, declare yourselves and declare intent to be the lead agency, and circulate that to the involved and interested agencies. It will be a coordinated review. I think the resolution lists those agencies. One of them is DEC because the land right next door is theirs because of the river and their fishing access site. I think we also included the fire department, some others, health department,
Zoning board, just in case.
ZBA, just in case for the setback thing we discussed. Yeah, and then referring everything to the county for 239M is another action you can take tonight.
Okay.
There's a 30-day waiting period for both the seeker notification and the county referral, so I think, the applicant can work on responding to the comments, and, we can probably discuss this after that 30 days expires and there's no responses, we can continue the review. I know we meet bi-weekly, but it might not make sense to talk about this at the next meeting if we haven't heard back.
Okay.
Is there a possibility we could set a public hearing at some point, possibly after the 30 days?
would be typical that we would do
Yeah.
that after.
Okay,
we wait
so
to
we'll
see
just
the
do that the
responses.
following meeting.
Well, they're gonna wanna see the responses to all the comments in that comment memo,
Mhm.
and then if it's complete, they'll set a public hearing.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Members of the planning board, having heard from our consultants, anybody have any further comments or questions at this time? Okay. All right, so we have a resolution classifying the action and referring the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development for Sherman Hill development. Let's just, just give me a moment. So we've been calling it Sherman Hill Road 2 Family, so I think we'll stick with.
So the application called it Sherman Hill Development, but change it to Sherman Hill Road.
Okay.
Can we add site plan then, just so, yeah, or something, two-family?
Whereas the applicant MCC Holdings LLC has submitted an application for special use approval, site plan approval, and erosion sediment control permit approval to construct 8 two-family dwellings on 4 existing lots, collectively known as the project, identified as tax lot numbers 7062-00-66453, -6605512, -682496, and -658497, collectively known as the property. And whereas the development of the 4 lots constituting the property is being considered as a single project, and whereas the property is located in the RU district and the floodplain, stream corridor, and aquifer overlay districts, and whereas two-family dwellings are a specially permitted use in the RU district, and whereas pursuant to section 145-12B, a lot may contain more than one principal residential structure and accessory apartment, provided that the lot has sufficient acreage to comply with applicable density requirements, and whereas the property was created as part of the River Valley Estates Flexible Subdivision filed map 11728, and whereas the applicant has provided calculations indicating that the River Valley Estates Flexible Subdivision would have been entitled to 45 units, although only 20 lots were created, and is seeking to apply a portion of the remaining density for the project. And whereas the project is depicted on a plan entitled Sherman Hill Development, prepared by Renia Engineering Design, PLLC, sheets 06, 104, 204, 304, and 404, dated April 17, 2024, and architectural plans entitled Multifamily for MCC Holdings, prepared by D. Freeman Architect, dated October 10, 2023, collectively known as the site plan set. And whereas the applicant has submitted a full environmental assessment form, or EAF, dated April 17, 2024, pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, also known as SECRA. And whereas in accordance with SECRA, the planning board is required to determine the classification of the proposed project, and whereas pursuant to 6 NYCRR, what? You only need one of those, right?
Well, there's two, because there's two sections.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Sections 617.4 and 617.5, a project that is neither type 1 nor type 2 is unlisted. And whereas the property is located within 500 feet of a county road and a county agricultural district, and whereas pursuant to section 239-M of the General Municipal Law, a project located within 500 feet of a state or county highway must be referred to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development for a report and recommendation thereon. Now therefore be it resolved that the planning board hereby, 1, classifies the project as an unlisted action under SECRA, 2, declares its intent to conduct a coordinated SECRA review of the project and directs its secretary to send notice of its intent to all involved and interested agencies, and 3, directs the secretary to refer the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development pursuant to GML section 239-M. And the involved and interested agencies are the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the Dutchess County Department of Behavioral and Community Health, the Town of Dover Zoning Board of Appeals, and the J.H. Ketchum Hose Company, Incorporated. This resolution is being offered by Member Lorberdier, seconded by Member Villano. Discussion? Okay. Seeing no discussion, resolution classifying the action, referring the application to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development for Sherman Hill Road two-family. Secretary, please call the roll.
Member Valano.
Aye.
Member Sador.
Aye.
Member Palmer.
Aye.
Member LaRobier.
Aye.
Member Cortine.
Aye. That resolution is passed 5-0 with 2 absences. All right. You have anything further this evening for Sherman Hill Road?
I just have a quick question, if I could ask Engineer Berger. Do you have free time to schedule a call, or should I reach out to you a little later?
I'll figure it out.
All right, cool.
Yes?
Just want to clarify what they're seeking for the building department, I guess, to confirm that there's no more than single units on the existing lots. Like, what would suffice for you, a letter from the building department here in town?
One option, yep.
I mean, I'm just trying to,
We can pull all the real property data, which should say single-family use on
would
all.
that suffice on partial
Sure.
access
The
paperwork? on the
Parcel
lot?
access, property card info, the
Okay.
town.
That's easy, I can do that.
Yeah.
That would be acceptable, if I pulled it on the lots.
Again, just something that is just more than your word.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay.
Trust me either.
It's not about trust, it's trust and verify, so.
All righty,
All right,
perfect.
thank you.
Sorry again for running a little late, Chairman Cortine.
I mean, you should apologize to everyone, really.
You're just killing me right now. And all the board members.
Sounds like you need to get some
And all the
sleep.
Consultants.
I'd feel bad, but you were in Australia, so
I'm sure he's billing me from 7 o'clock, so.
I want to
I
check
had to
that.
drive here, didn't I?
So you'll follow up with Marilyn about the number of copies that she needs to circulate, because the 30 days runs from when these actually go out.
Yep.
So if she doesn't get the copies for a week, you're gonna,
I got you. You can have it.
okay.
Tomorrow. Marilyn, we'll give you a call.
Tomorrow morning.
And it's helpful when they're addressed with envelopes and everything, so she doesn't have to take care of that either. Yeah.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Secretary Memlin, I've made the edit to the document, I've saved it, so it's on your laptop. All right,
Thank you, everybody.
And I made those edits
Thank
on
you.
my end, so the next one will be
okay.
consistent.
All right, next we have NY Transco Dover Electric Substation. Let me close this out. Engineer Berger, can you close that door, please? Thank you. Okay, so we're going to continue our discussions of the NY Transco application. Before we get to any of the substance of what we received from our consultants, just want to go through a few things for everyone in the public. So the public hearing for Transco was closed on April 15th. In total, that was 6 different meetings that we had a public hearing for last year and 2 this year, where we accepted written comment and people could speak, say their mind. And we're still receiving emails. People are entitled to speak their piece, but just do know that the public hearing portion of this project is over. It'd be inappropriate for us to consider any further public comments that are submitted. And anything received beyond today won't be part of the record or posted on the website. We've tried very hard here to ensure a transparent and fair review process. We've ensured that every interested person has had an opportunity to be heard, and then heard again, and again, and again, and again, and again. Public has provided a lot of input, and it's now time for the planning board to consider and evaluate that input. We receive information from our consultants. They are professionals in their field, and just like we take the public's concerns seriously, we also take our consultants' opinions seriously. In the end, it is the planning board's decision to be made and no one else's. I'd also like to address some unfounded allegations that are being directed to the planning board. It's very, very clear, if you go back to the previous meeting, that we were going to be getting comments from our consultants. We were going to be considering those comments at the next typical meeting. It should be no surprise that on May 20th, today, 5 weeks after the public hearing, that we would be considering comments from our consultants. So the implication that the agenda being posted on Thursday, May 16th is something that is meant to dissuade people from being here is completely unfounded. We had a meeting 5 weeks ago. We were possibly going to have a meeting about this 2 weeks ago. We did not. If anything, it gave our consultants even more time to help us in considering the public's input and giving us the best advice that they can in their professional capacity. These pre-agenda meetings that we being myself, consultants, and Secretary Van Millen, take place a week, maybe sometimes 2 weeks before every one of our meetings. That's when the agenda is settled. That's when the agenda is posted. Secretary Van Millen is a dedicated public servant, and for anyone to imply that there's something nefarious going on is reprehensible. She's dedicated her life in very many ways to the public in this town and the public more broadly, and I will not tolerate anyone attacking her. And frankly, if you have a problem with anything I'm saying, the town board is my boss. You can go talk to them. I work for them. Planning board members work for them. They meet once or twice every month. All right. Let's start with Engineer Berger. And I guess along those same lines as I was just going through, Mr. Berger, you're a well-regarded engineer in your field. The idea that I would tell you what to write in a memo seems laughable to me. I think if I did that, you would offer your resignation.
I would.
So, please, proceed.
The memo I wrote to the board was my own, based on ethical guidelines I abide to as a professional engineer and surveyor in New York State. New York State requires that professionals monitor the profession as a matter of obligation. Anyone offering a professional opinion, whether it be at a public meeting or in a written format, must be licensed in the field that they are discussing. Mm-hmm. My memo to the board was just advising the board that the individual who had written and spoke before this board was not licensed in New York State. That's only. I did not critique him. I did not weigh in on what he said in any manner. I weighed in on the fact that he was not licensed in New York State, and as such must be licensed by the State Education Department by law, and that the board needs to have the information before them when they consider evidence before them. That's all I wrote, and I stand behind it. For me not to have written that memo to this board, I would have been negligent in my license, and I would have been sanctioned by my profession for not advising this board of that action by state law.
Okay. Thank you, Engineer Berger. Next we'll go to Planner Werner.
Okay.
Planner Werner, this is the corrected memo.
That's right, yeah, that was just a minor correction made to the list of comments. So this is a lengthy memo that we put together just to provide responses to comments on the topic of contamination, ecological issues related to contamination. This goes back not just to the public hearing comments that you received in April of this year, but we went all the way back to the original public hearings on the previous application from 2022. So it's pretty comprehensive in that we tried to capture every comment related to this topic and provide a response for it. I'm not going to go through all 38 pages of it.
Thank you.
My colleague that wrote it and the professional engineer that works over him that wrote it obviously aren't here. I'm a planner, I'm not a QEP or a PE, but they wrote all these answers to these comments. I came up with 9 themes that I think have been conveyed repeatedly by the comments, so I'll go through each one of those and then I'll direct you to a response in the memo that I can then just read out loud.
Okay.
I feel like I should just read it from the memo so that I'm not misquoting anything and I'm just relaying the experts that work with me on the issue. So that's what I'll do. And the first one has to do with concerns about the former town dump site as it relates to the proposed interconnection north of the site on the other side of Cricket Hill Road. So if you go to page 6,
You could give me a comment number, that would go quicker.
it was response number 4 on page 6. The page numbers are on the top of the pages.
Okay, that'll work too.
Yeah. So this is response 4 on the bottom of page 6.
Mhm.
So there's comment 6, this is response below it. Okay, the Cricket Hill Road site, New York State DEC site number 314030 is identified as being under the oversight of the New York State Superfund program. The New York State DEC remediation database indicates that a preliminary site assessment, PSA, has been completed. Along with an EPA site investigation, no leachate or sheen was observed. Downgradient, groundwater, and sediment samples showed no evidence of hazardous waste disposal. There is no documentation of hazardous waste disposal at the property, and the site does not qualify for listing on the Registry of Inactive Hazardous Waste Sites. An investigation of this property is not included as part of the SEQR review for the proposed project, being the Transco substation, because the interconnection to the transmission line is under the jurisdiction of the Public Service Commission. In any event, Transco is not the responsible party required to address the Cricket Hill site, and the planning board has no legal authority to enter the property and conduct an investigation. Any future work conducted at the Cricket Hill Road site would have a statutory requirement to be completed by the identified responsible party under oversight of New York State DEC. Although limited bedrock blasting is anticipated in the northern and northwest portions of the Transco site, the town engineer has reviewed a hydrogeologic and geotechnical memorandum provided by Terracon on behalf of the applicant dated April 7th, 2022, indicating that the construction as well as operation of the proposed project will not have an adverse or measurable impact on the quantity or quality of water which enters the system for the adjacent grain swamp. In addition, following several rounds of coordination and review with the planning board's consultants and New York State DEC, New York State DEC's Division of Fish and Wildlife confirmed via email on July 15th, 2022, that with inclusion of measures proposed by the applicant as part of the proposed project and memorialized in the site plan set, the project will avoid potential changes to the chemistry, this is quote, avoid potential changes to the chemistry, quality, and quantity of surface and groundwater entering the adjacent wetlands, end quote. Also refer to response 46, which is on the bottom of page 24. Okay. Yes, right there. As noted in the prior approvals granted by the planning board, the proposed project will interconnect with the existing transmission system via new overhead 345 kilovolt lines tying into the Con Ed line 398, which is an existing 345 kV electric transmission line located immediately north of the project site and Cricket Hill Road, aka County Road 26. The proposed interconnection is subject to an existing Certificate of Environmental Compatibility and Public Need, CECPN, issued by the New York State Public Service Commission, PSC. Upgrades within the right-of-way to the line 398 are subject to the review jurisdiction of the PSC pursuant to New York State Public Service Law, Article 7, and not the town of Dover. The right-of-way upgrades are similarly excluded from review under seeker. Nonetheless, the line 398 right-of-way upgrades have been reviewed by agencies consulted during the town's review under seeker, including the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. As discussed further below, these agencies have identified no adverse impacts or corresponding agency permits in connection with the work proposed for line 398 of the proposed project. So those two hit on the issue of the interconnection and the old dump site to the north.
Okay.
All right, moving along to number 2. This theme would be the town's consideration of findings from off-site sampling done on the Frogs parcel, specifically the metal, aluminum, and certain phthalate compounds, and the request that the town require an additional off-site investigation. So let's start with response number 12, bottom of page 9. Take a drink real quick. The January 2024 subsurface investigation was planned for and conducted under oversight of a QEP, that's Qualified Environmental Professional, associated with a firm that is licensed to complete environmental engineering and associated investigations in the state of New York, while following a work plan consistent with the New York State DEC requirements for site investigation. The results of the investigation documented that there was no evidence of a release of contamination, there was no contaminant plume in groundwater, and no evidence of off-site migration of the compounds that were detected. Based on the results of the investigation, there is no evidence connecting the conditions at the Transco site to any off-site contamination scenario, and therefore there is no reasonable professional basis to conduct an off-site investigation. It should be further noted that to assess any off-site testing results, environmental professionals have a regulatory requirement working under New York State DEC remedial programs to rely on data that has been collected by a qualified licensed firm, a state-certified professional engineering or professional geology firm, by qualified individuals under oversight of a QEP, using approved techniques, appropriate personal protective equipment, certified glassware, documentation of sample parameters, chain of custody, with analysis by a New York State Department of Health approved laboratory, being presented in a report with the required quality assurance, quality control, QA/QC documentation. While the investigation work on site has been conducted following such protocols and the site is not in a New York State DEC remedial program, AKRF is not aware of any reports that have been provided to the town for review related to off-site sampling. That's reports. All right, also refer to response number 38 at the bottom of page 20.
All right, so comment 38, and then the response.
Yeah, right there. The results of all previous investigations were considered when developing the work plan for the January 2024 subsurface investigation, including the identified contaminants of concern, detected compounds, relevant concentrations, comparison to available New York State DEC SCOs, and professional knowledge of general background conditions and the occurrence of anomalous detections. The analytical list utilized for the January 2024 subsurface investigation included a full suite of analysis and compounds, New York State DEC Part 375, Environmental Remediation Programs, Subpart 376-6, Tables 375-6.8b, that is required by New York State DEC at regulated sites when characterizing soil and groundwater to determine whether a release of contamination has occurred. It should be noted that Bis 1,2-ethyl hexyl phthalate is a plasticizer for PVC and is one of the most ubiquitous contaminants in the environment. It It is a fat-soluble, not water-soluble compound found in most plastics, especially plastic tubing, food wrappers, and medical supplies, and is known as a common laboratory artifact since the sampling bottles and laboratory extraction tools are made of plastic. It is also found in other plastic equipment such as shower curtains, garden hoses, pool liners, waterproof clothing, and is a noted carrier in scented products, including cosmetics, personal care products, perfumes, scented candles, and laundry detergents. The most common human exposure is eating food that comes in a wrapper, drinking bottled water, and exposure to personal care products. The common occurrence of food wrappers in plastic bottles and roadside garbage, along with the discharge of laundry and bathwater through septic systems, is a likely contributor to its common environmental occurrence, especially within the low point for a large watershed. It should also be noted that aluminum is the most abundant metal in nature, making up over 8% of the Earth's crust, and was identified in the New York State DEC, New York State DOH, Rural New York State Surface Soil Survey at consistent concentrations across New York State ranging from 10,000 to 20,000 parts per million, ppm. Okay. Theme number 3, the selection of the appropriate soil cleanup objectives, or SCOs, used in AKRF's investigation, and New York State DEC's authority on the SCOs utilized in AKRF's investigation. So let's start with comment response 15 on the bottom of page 12.
Okay.
Investigation under oversight of New York State DEC and/or New York State DOH, including state approval of SCOs, work plan, and reporting approvals, is not applicable to the Transco site, as the previous ESAs, environmental site assessments, including AKRF's January 2024 ESA, did not identify any site conditions, i.e. reportable spill, identification of a release of contamination, that would fall under New York State DEC statutory oversight, or meet the established requirements to apply for and enter into a voluntary New York State DEC remediation program. This finding is reiterated through the April 1st, 2024 correspondence provided to the Planning Board by the Regional Director of New York State DEC. And I will quote, DEC soil cleanup objectives at 6 NYCRR subpart 375-6 are used when a site is part of a remedial program administered by DEC, such as the Brownfield Cleanup Program or State Superfund Program. ... This property is not part of a DEC remedial program referenced above, and therefore the SCOs do not apply. Based on the information provided, DEC does not have jurisdiction to require the application of any particular SCOs at this time. DEC has no other comments." End quote. Moreover, it is AKRF's professional opinion that the investigation results conducted at the site are not present, elevated, at levels that would make it eligible to be accepted into the New York State DEC Brownfield Cleanup Program. All right, we're on number 4, halfway
All right.
there. Any questions so far?
Any questions?
Number 4 has to do with the request to utilize the Protection of Ecological Resources, SCO, due to the proximity of the Great Swamp Habitat. Refer to response 14, top of page 12.
Which comment, I'm sorry?
14,
14.
top of page 12. It should be noted that SCOs promulgated, are you there yet?
There we go.
Okay. It should be noted that SCOs promulgated by New York State DEC are not applicable to the Transco site, as there is no documented release of contamination and the site is not under regulatory oversight in a New York State DEC remediation program. Refer to response to comment 15 below, where this has been confirmed in writing by New York State DEC through correspondence to the Planning Board dated April 1, 2024. For sites not under New York State DEC oversight, environmental professionals will select SCOs for comparison based on the intended use and their experience working on sites that are overseen by New York State DEC where site-specific SCOs have been selected. For AKRF's January 2024 subsurface investigation, the residential use SCOs, even though the intended use could be identified as commercial or industrial, and the protection of groundwater SCOs, even though an on-site release of contamination was not identified, were selected as a conservative approach. This is consistent with sites being overseen by New York State DEC and provides for defendable comparisons that can be made for protection of human health and the environment, including the mobilization potential of any identified compounds. An important procedural factor to note when considering the use of the Protection of Ecological Resources SCOs at a site, as described in the comment above, is that New York State DEC makes the determination to apply the protection of ecological resources, SCOs, when a release of contamination has been documented. There has been no evidence of a release at the Transco site. And when that release has shown through the appropriate investigatory process that the existing contaminant plume impacts or threatens to impact an identified ecological resource. The SI, subsurface investigation, completed by AKRF did not identify evidence of a release of contamination or a resulting contaminant plume. Also, response number 10, the bottom of page 8. The applicant has coordinated with New York State DEC's Division of Fish and Wildlife to provide appropriate measures to protect bog turtles, including turtle exclusion fencing and an education and encounter plan. Following several rounds of coordination and review with the Planning Board's consultants and New York State DEC, New York State DEC confirmed via email on July 15th, 2022, that with inclusion of measures proposed by the applicant as part of the proposed project and memorialized in the site plan set, proposed project will, quote, avoid and/or minimize any direct impacts to individual bog turtles and avoid potential changes to the chemistry, quality, and quantity of surface and groundwater entering the adjacent wetland, and further, that the project does not require a Part 182 incidental take permit for any state-listed species. Okay, next one is number 5, theme number 5, which is concerns about AKRF and tailored environment, TEs, that's Scott's, selection of sampling locations. So this is like the scope of work in our selection of where we did sampling. So this is response 19, page 14.
Okay.
AKRF has been contracted with the town of Dover for many years to provide planning and environmental advisory services to the town board and planning board. AKRF is not serving as consultant to, nor is AKRF advocating for, the applicant. In response to the Article 78 decision, the planning board voted in favor of having AKRF, not the applicant's consultant TRC, conduct a comprehensive subsurface investigation pursuant to a scope of work approved by the planning board and a professional geologist also hired by the planning board to serve as a third-party reviewer on the Transco application. Scott Taylor, professional geologist of Tailored Environment, Inc., TE. Through their respective arrangements with the town, AKRF and TE are paid out of an established escrow account funded and replenished by the applicant, similar to any other application requiring professional consulting services currently before the town. AKRF sampling locations were determined by licensed and qualified professionals with extensive experience in preparation and review of Phase 1 environmental site assessments, subsurface Phase 2 investigations, and site remediation in New York State for sites under both New York State DEC oversight and not under New York State DEC oversight. AKRF sampling locations were not selective, quote, and did not, quote, evade locations where most debris was stored when the site was used as a junkyard, end quote. AKRF's investigation scope of work dated January 12, 2024, and approved by the Planning Board and TE included a sampling plan that was biased towards areas where potential sources and intervals of contamination could be present, and also to achieve coverage over the full extent of previously documented/reported areas of stockpiled car parts, tires, and the anticipated limits of disturbance for the project. Also included were 3 down gradient locations, test pit 10, 12, and 13, where surface water would have the potential to discharge onto the south adjacent property containing a portion of the Great Swamp. Any other questions?
Any questions?
Yeah, okay. All right, number 6, concerns about the depth of soil samples taken by AKRF. Response 40 on page 22. Yep. The conceptual site model used by AKRF's qualified professionals is consistent with the accepted practices for site characterization and takes into account contaminants of concern, release mechanism, points of contact with environmental media, contaminant migration pathways, and fate and transport of identified contamination through a resulting contaminant plume. The location, depth, and analysis of the samples was selected relative to requirements of seeker, the site characterization requirements for conducting subsurface investigations, and were based on the most likely chance to identify a release of contamination. Also we'll go up to the background section. This is before any of the responses. This is just like the background of all the work that was done on page 3. You can scroll up to page 3. Right there. This will be the second sentence of the last paragraph on page 3.
Okay.
It should also be noted that as part of construction, the applicant intends to excavate to bedrock, removing all overburdened soil within the anticipated area of disturbance. Through the SIR, Site Investigation Report, AKRF recommended that the applicant prepare Soils Materials Management Plan, SMMP, to be implemented during earthwork to identify the proper handling, stockpiling, characterization, and off-site disposal of all excavated material. The SMMP would also establish contingency measures in the event that unknown tanks or unknown pockets of contamination are encountered during redevelopment. Review and approval of the SMMP by the town's consultants will be required prior to any future final approvals on the proposed project, and implementation of the SMMP during construction will be required as a condition of any future approvals on the proposed project. All right, number 7 has to do with concerns about the nature of the work done by the applicant at the south end of the site in the fall of 2023. Comment response 22 on page 15. Okay. As documented by the town engineer in a letter to the town building inspector dated November 1st, 2023, following an inspection of the site, the following work was identified in this area, that being the south end of the site. 1. Gravel was being placed and compacted over the existing parking area in the rear of the existing building. 2. The area just north of the parking area, north of the fence, was being restored as it was in a state of erosion caused by recent storms and from access used to enter the site previously for the tree removal. The area had core logs placed along the edge for proper erosion control, and the area was stabilized. The representative on site stated that seeding and mulching would occur in this area. And 3, repairs to the holes in the fence for security reasons. The work completed in the parking lot area on the southern portion of the Transco site was conducted in accordance with the prevailing state and local requirements. In addition, this work is not part of the application and/or proposed project under review as part of the seeker review process, and it was conducted to maintain existing improvements on the site, which will remain in place once the proposed project is operational. By definition, the seeker review process is applicable to the areas affected by the proposed project. Okay, number 8, requests to investigate the southern area of the site not proposed for development. Response 44, page 23. Planning Board is reviewing potential impacts from the proposed project. The limits of disturbance for excavation and construction as depicted on the proposed project site plan do not include the southern area of the site currently improved with an existing building and parking area. Areas that fall outside of the proposed project will not be changed or disturbed, are outside of the Planning Board site plan and associated environmental review. AKRF's January 2024 investigation included a sampling plan that achieved coverage over the full extent of the anticipated limits of disturbance for the project, and also included 3 downgradient locations, TP 10, 12, and 13, where surface water could have the potential to discharge onto the south adjacent property containing a portion of the Great Swamp. It is therefore AKRF's professional opinion that the sampling locations, which were also approved by TE prior to the work taking place, were appropriate for the requisite hard look at the subsurface conditions of the project on the project site, i.e. presence of contamination, and the implications of construction of the proposed project related to those conditions. All right, the last one is concerns that the detected metals on the site are leaching into the Transco site's groundwater and affecting off-site properties, including the Frogs parcel. Refer to response 54, page 31.
All right, so there's the comment, and then the map, and then
Yes.
table, and then your response. Okay.
Yes, 54, yep. It should be noted that AKRF's MWA groundwater sample was collected using methods consistent with EPA low flow standards, including real-time continuous readings of the discharge water to document the general chemistry parameters and confirm that the sample is representative of aquifer conditions. The laboratory results documented there was no arsenic, beryllium, cadmium, chromium, copper, cyanide, mercury, nickel, selenium, or silver detected in the groundwater sample. Lead was detected in sample MWA at a concentration of 0.94 J micrograms per liter, or parts per billion, which was below the New York State DEC ambient water quality guidance values of 25 micrograms per liter. The J flag was the lead result. The J flag with the lead result indicates an estimated concentration that was too low for the laboratory equipment to quantify. The concentration of zinc, 19.3 micrograms per liter, was also well below its New York State DEC ambient water quality guidance value of 2,000 micrograms per liter. These results, combined with the fact that no volatile organic compounds, VOCs, semi-volatile organic compounds, VOCs, polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, and pesticides were detected in the groundwater sample collected from MWA, support the conclusion that there is no evidence of a release of contamination to groundwater, and the metals compounds present in soils on the Transco property are not migrating off-site. I'll also refer you back up to the background discussion on page 3. The second and third paragraphs under background. Are we on page 3?
Yes.
Okay, on that page. Yeah, just scroll up a little. Where it says on the March 1st, 2024. Yep. The March 1st, 2024 subsurface investigation report was reviewed by TE, and in a letter from TE to the planning board dated March 8th, 2024, it was stated that TE observed that AKRF staff followed the approved subsurface investigation scope of work. TE observed that AKRF staff followed industry and regulatory standards while completing the subsurface investigation, end quote. The March 8th, 2024 TE letter included 2 comments. First, it was noted by TE that 2-butanone detected in TP17, quote, may be attributable to natural processes, and TE agrees that this chemical was not released during historic land use, end quote. Second, it was requested that an additional analysis of the TP1 soil sample for cadmium and copper be completed following a synthetic precipitation leaching procedure, SPLP, to help understand understand the mobility of these metals in the environment, end quote. On March 12, 2024, AKRF submitted to the planning board a revised subsurface investigation report, which was unchanged with the exception of the additional SPLP analysis of TP1 soil sample requested by TE. The soil sample from TP1, which contained the highest concentrations of cadmium and copper, was tested for leachable metals using SPLP to determine the potential for metals to, quote, leach from soil during precipitation events into solution and eventually into groundwater. As presented in the SPLP results, leachable cadmium was detected at a concentration of 0.96 J micrograms per liter, or parts per billion, and leachable copper was detected at 8.4 parts per billion. The J flag with the cadmium result indicates an estimated concentration that was lower than the reporting limits of the laboratory method. New York State DEC has not promulgated criteria or guidance values for SPLP results. An established process for understanding SPLP results includes comparison to 10 times the value of the New York State DEC ambient water quality guidance values, which is based on additional dilution that would take place in groundwater or surface water as part of the natural leaching process. The SPLP results were not only below the 10 times values, but they are below the direct guidance value for cadmium, 50 parts per billion, and copper, 200 parts per billion, even without the dilution. As mentioned in the summary above, the total cadmium and total copper soil results were also well below their respective protection of groundwater SCOs. The SPLP results support the conclusion that the detected metals are not anticipated to migrate at a level that would impact groundwater. The March 12, 2024 subsurface investigation report, including the requested SPLP analysis, was reviewed by TE. In a letter from TE to the planning board dated March 26, 2024, TE concurred with AKRF's assessment of the requested SPLP analysis. That concludes my summary of the 9 themes that I wanted to call out. I can answer questions that I can. If not, I can refer back to Brian.
Sure.
And Scott's here.
Planner Werner. Any comments, questions for our planner, Mr. Werner? No? Yes? No? Okay. Thank Thank you, Planner Werner. All right.
No,
We have
I think that was quite
memo from
comprehensive.
Taylor Environment. Mr. Taylor?
I think that was quite comprehensive.
Yes. Okay, thank you. All right. So, Attorney Polidoro?
Just that the board has done, the summary of this whole thing is that the board has conducted its own independent testing, and the results ended up substantially the same as the results of the applicant on the first go-around. You've taken time to address all the comments of the public. I think Mr. Warner did a nice job of summarizing the 9 themes that we've been hearing. So tonight, if you're ready, we can start going through the EAF. You'll recall there's a form which includes part 2, answering questions, and then we have a narrative. And what we've done with the narrative is we've left sections that were previously reviewed by the court and upheld alone, so that there's no new information being added to those sections. But we did add language. Aaron did a nice job of adding more language, and that is presented in red so that you can review what's new and different
Okay.
from last year's version. Do you want to walk them through part 2?
Yeah, the Part 2 EAF was also modified to address the decision, so, hang on a sec. Open it up on my end here. None of the answers were changed from, the original no or small impact, but there was new categories added to certain sections. So if you go to, for example, number 4, impact on groundwater, at the very end, there's an other. We added potential for subsurface conditions of the site to impact adjacent critical environmental area, Great Swamp, with the no or small impact inclusion. Then moving down to plants and animals, 7. Similarly, under the other category, we added potential for subsurface conditions at the site to impact adjacent critical environmental area, Great Swamp. That's under J. Nothing for agricultural, aesthetics doesn't change, historic doesn't change, open space doesn't change. Then 12, critical environmental areas, other impacts, C, at the bottom there. We checked off the other, and we put potential for subsurface conditions of the site to impact adjacent critical environmental area, Great Swamp. Transportation, no changes. 14, energy, no changes. 15, noise, odor, and light, hasn't changed. Human health, 16, again, other impacts, M, potential for subsurface conditions of the site to impact off-site properties. No or small impact. Community plans, no changes. Community character, no changes. That's the extent of the changes on part 2.
Okay.
There's also a part 3 form. Here we have, similar to the first go-around, it's referring to a separate, and it's what we're calling revised negative declaration document. Right now it's dated today's date, that could change. That has all the reasoned elaboration within it. It wouldn't fit in this box, so it's a separate document. Scrolling down, its seeker status is the same. Parts 1, 2, and 3 were completed. The only thing that was added was under the top of the next page where it says, upon review of the information recorded on this EAF as noted, plus this additional support information, we added the AKRF subsurface investigation on 3/21, the report dated 3/21/24. It's the list of supporting reports. Everything else hasn't changed.
Okay.
Same boxes checked off. Town of Dover is the lead agency, planning board, no significant adverse impacts, no environmental impact statement necessary. your information as the chairman for the lead agency at the bottom, and the contact information.
Okay.
So then there's the long document that's the neg deck that has edits to it. So everything new is red.
Mhm.
We're calling it a revised negative declaration at the top, superseding the previous version.
Mhm.
Oh.
Okay, so let's let's go through the part two, so it's clear what we're all looking at here. All right. Number one, impact on land. Proposed action may involve construction on or physical alteration of the land surface of the proposed site. We are checking off yes, but all of the subparts to that are no or small impact may occur. Okay, number two, impact on geological features. The proposed action may result in the modification or destruction of or inhibit access to any unique or unusual landforms on the site. Examples of cliffs, dunes, minerals, fossils, caves. And the answer is no. Three, impacts on surface water. The proposed action may affect one or more wetlands or other surface water bodies, streams, rivers, ponds, or lakes. Okay, so we're checking off yes. Okay, all the subparts, we are checking off no or small impact may occur. Okay, number four, impact on groundwater. The proposed action may result in new or additional use of groundwater, or may have the potential to introduce contaminants to groundwater or an aquifer. We're saying yes, but again, all the subparts are no or small impact may occur. Five, impact on flooding. The proposed action may result in development on land subject to flooding. The answer there is no. Impacts on air. The proposed action may include a state-regulated air emission source, and the answer is no. 7, impacts on plants and animals. The proposed action may result in a loss of flora or fauna. The answer is yes, and the answer to all the subparts is no or small impact may occur. 8, impact on agricultural resources. The proposed action may impact agricultural resources. The answer is no. 9, impact on aesthetic resources. The land use of the proposed action are obviously different from or in sharp contrast to current land use patterns between the proposed project and a scenic or aesthetic resource. The answer is yes. For the subparts, it's no or small impact may occur. Number 10, impact on historic and agricultural resources. The proposed action may occur in or adjacent to a historic or agricultural resource. The answer is yes. For all the subparts, it's no or small impact may occur. Number 11, impact on open space and recreation. The proposed action may result in a loss of recreational opportunities or a reduction of an open space resource as designated in any adopted municipal open space plan. The answer is no. Number 12, impact on critical environmental areas. The proposed action may be located within or adjacent to a critical environmental area. The answer is yes. For the subparts, it's no or small impact may occur. 13, impact on transportation. The proposed action may result in a change to existing transportation systems. The answer is no. 14, impact on energy. The proposed action may cause an increase in the use of any form of energy. The answer is yes. The subparts is no or small impact may occur. For number 15, impact on noise, odor, and light. The proposed action may result in an increase in noise, odors, or outdoor lighting. The answer is yes. For letters A, C, D, and E, No or small impact may occur. For letter B, the proposed action may result in blasting within 1,500 feet of any residence, hospital, school, licensed daycare center, or nursing home. And the answer to that is a moderate to large impact may occur. Impact on human health. The proposed action may have an impact on human health from exposure to new or existing sources of contaminants. The answer is yes. For all the subparts, there's a no or small impact may occur. 17, consistency with community plans. Proposed action is not consistent with adopted land use plans. The answer to that is no. Consistency with community character. The proposed action is inconsistent with the existing community character. The answer to that is yes. And then for each of the subparts, it's a no or small impact may occur. All right, do any members of the planning board have any comments, questions, anything you'd like to review further?
What's on this B, moderate to large? We've provided for that to be mitigated. There's some kind of plan in place for that, right?
So 15 for 15B, the proposed.
Yes.
The proposed action may result in blasting within 1,500 feet of any residence, hospital, school, licensed daycare center, or nursing home. So we're agreeing that there is again, the potential for a moderate to large impact that may occur. Attorney Polidoro, I don't know if you want to, or Planner Warner.
Yeah, I was going to say that for all of these, even the ones that have no or small impact, the neg deck document goes through each of the criteria of determining significance in the seeker regs and addresses pretty much all of these. And, this is a holdover from the previous negative declaration. We had the moderate to large, and we had the elaboration on blasting within the neg deck itself.
Thank you.
It's on page 4. Yep, middle of page 4, where it starts, of the neg deck document.
Thank you.
Cover it in 2 places, actually. But if you go to page 4, where it says blasting of bedrock, a little up.
Yeah.
Right there. Want me to read it? Or
Blasting of bedrock on a limited extent of the site will occur within 1,500 feet of a residence and a critical environmental area, the Great Swamp. Blasting will be temporary and is expected to occur at a point within the site preparation phase of the project's construction. Excuse me, a phase that in total will last approximately 4 months. All blasting will be in accordance with town building code requirements, Town Code Chapter 69, and require a permit from the town. Additional information on blasting is provided below under the discussion of critical environmental areas.
that's on page 5. First paragraph.
The site is adjacent to the Great Swamp, which is identified. Yeah. So the project will not result in, quote, the impairment of the environmental characteristics of a critical environmental area as designated pursuant to subdivision 617.14 subsection G and 617.7 subsection C, subsection 1, subsection 3. The site is adjacent to the Great Swamp, which is identified as a critical environmental area. Friends of the Great Swamp have identified a potential concern with blasting, creating fissures and vibrations in the marble bedrock of the Great Swamp. Although limited bedrock blasting is anticipated in the northern and northwestern portions of the site, the town engineer has reviewed a hydrogeologic and geotechnical memorandum provided by Terracon on behalf of the applicant dated April 7, 2022, indicating that construction as well as operation of the project is not shown to have an adverse or measurable impact on the quantity or quality of water which enters the system for the adjacent Great Swamp. In addition, following several rounds of coordination and review with the Planning Board's consultants and New York State DEC's Division of Fish and Wildlife confirmed via email on July 15, 2022 that with inclusion of measures proposed by the applicant as part of the project and memorialized in the site plan set, the project will, quote, avoid potential changes to the chemistry, quality, and quantity of surface and groundwater entering the adjacent wetlands, end quote. Further, no blasting shall occur between September 30th and April 1st annually. Okay.
I just want to add that we reviewed the Part 2 form, you'll recall, in January 2023. We went question by question. We discussed what each question meant. We discussed all of the backup data that the board had supporting that question. And so this time around, the answers to the questions that were not impacted by this supplemental review that's been happening remain the same, and the basis for those answers remains the same, with the focus on the changes in the neg deck having to do with the potential for soil and water contamination. So just reminding everyone that January 2023, you did go through and answer every question.
Yes. And that's why I was just simply reviewing all of them. Thank you. All right, any members of the planning board have anything further on the EAF Part 2? No? Okay. All right. All right, and then for the EAF Part 3, where we list out the reasons supporting this determination. Okay. We will refer to a separate revised negative declaration document that is dated May 20, 2024. That the determination of significance is that this is unlisted, and the identifying portions of the EAF completed for this project are parts 1, 2, and 3. Further, upon review of the information regarded on this EAF as noted, plus the additional support information, a visual impact assessment by TRC, September 1, 2021, revised April 28, 2022, and December 2nd, 2021. Sound level impact assessment and testing protocols by Epsilon on July 28, 2022. Soil and groundwater testing by TRC on July 28, 2022, and AKRF on March 21, 2024. Blasting and hydrogeology memo from Terracon on April 7, 2022. The United States Army Corps of Engineers, no permit required letter of March 3, 2022. New York State DEC validated wetland map of October 28, 2021. New York State DEC and U.S. Fish and Wildlife correspondence on wetlands and T&E species, July 15, 2022, and December 27, 2022. OPR HP archaeological and agricultural review letters dated August 13, 2021, November 23, 2021, and May 31, 2022. TRC EJ response memo dated November 4, 2022. New York State DEC email on the PEJA dated December 16, 2022. Okay. And considering both the magnitude and importance of each identified potential impact is the inclusion of the Town of Dover Planning Board as lead agency that A, this project will result in no significant adverse impacts on the environment, and therefore an environmental impact statement need not be prepared. Accordingly, this negative declaration is issued. Okay. So again, we have that document as Part 3. And we have, again, the updated revised negative declaration, and again, now dated May 20, 2024. All right, any members of the, any questions from any members of the planning board? No. Okay. All right, so at this time, I will read through the changes in the revised, now revised negative declaration, which supersedes the negative declaration issued on February 6th, 2023, now dated May 20, 2024. The Town of Dover Planning Board, as lead agency, has reaffirmed its findings issued on February 6, 2023, that the proposed action described below will not have a significant impact from a substantial adverse change in air quality, traffic, noise, solid waste production, potential for flooding, erosion or drainage problems, removal or destruction of large quantities of flora and fauna, substantial interference with the movement of any resident or migratory fish or wildlife species, impact on a significant habitat area, substantial adverse impacts on a threatened or endangered species of animal or plant, or the habitat of such species, or other significant adverse impacts to natural resources, creation of a material conflict with the community's current plans or goals as officially approved or adopted, the impairment of the character or quality of important historical, archaeological, architectural, and aesthetic resources or an existing community or neighborhood character, major change in the use of either the quantity or type of energy, a substantial change in the use or intensity of use of land, including agricultural, open space, or recreational resources, or in its capacity to support existing uses. Encouragement of large number of people to a place or places compared to the number of people who would come absent such action, creation of a material demand for other actions that would result in one of the above consequences. Yes, that was all one sentence.
It was just reiterating the headings,
Yes.
the impacts that you are looking at.
Okay, as to potential impacts for a substantial adverse change in ground or surface water quality or quantity, potential for leaching, the impairment of the environmental characteristics of a critical environmental area, creation of a hazard to human health. The Planning Board reaffirms its prior findings issued on February 6, 2023, and adopts the supplemental findings set forth in quote-unquote red in each section below, finding that the project as proposed will not result in a significant adverse environmental impacts, and that a draft environmental impact statement will not be prepared. Okay, and then there's a note here at the bottom of the first page. Minor technical corrections have been included where indicated, which do not affect the substantive conclusion. All right. So before we get to the reasons supporting this determination, one additional sentence. Since the adoption of the initial negative declaration on February 6, 2023, the project has been partially undertaken. Trees were felled on the site by the applicant in March 2023 in accordance with the protective restrictions for the Indiana bat, and debris, including rubber tires, was removed from the site. Okay, we're now at the bottom of top of page 3. So reasons supporting this determination, again, beyond the ones that are already there. We have a final subsurface investigation, scope of work prepared by AKRF, dated January 12, 2024. Subsurface investigation report prepared by AKRF, dated March 1, 2024, revised March 21, 2024. Planning Board / New York State DEC correspondence on subsurface investigation soil cleanup objectives, or SCOs, dated January 12, 2024 and April 1, 2024. All right, this will end up being a little bit of just back up and down. So for the project will not result in any significant impacts from, quote, a substantial adverse change in existing air quality, ground or surface water quality or quantity, traffic or noise levels, a substantial increase in solid waste production, a substantial increase in potential for erosion, flooding, leaching, or drainage problems. Nothing additional was added here. All right. For the project will not result in any significant impacts from, quote, the removal or destruction of large quantities of vegetation or fauna, substantial interference with the movement of any resident or migratory fish or wildlife species, impacts on a significant habitat area, substantial adverse impacts on a threatened or endangered species of animal or plant, or the habitat of such a species, or other significant adverse impacts to natural resources. There is a minor addition to the sentence that now reads, following several rounds of coordination and review with the planning board's consultants and New York State DEC, New York State DEC's Division of Fish and Wildlife confirmed via email on July 15, 2022, that the inclusion of the measures proposed by the applicant as part of the project memorialized in the site plan set, the project will, quote, avoid or minimize any direct impacts to individual bog turtles and avoid potential changes to the chemistry, quality, and quantity of surface and groundwater entering the adjacent wetland, and further that the project does not require a Part 182 incidental take permit for any state-listed species. Okay. Any questions, comments so far from any members of the planning board? All right, the project will not result in, quote, the impairment of the environmental characteristics of a critical environmental area as designated pursuant to subdivision 617.14 subsection G and 617.7 C13. All right, in addition to adding that it's the New York State DEC's Division of Fish and Wildlife via that email. Other additions are the Friends of the Great Swamp have Friends of the Great Swamp had also identified a potential concern related to subsurface contamination on the site, migrating to the adjacent Great Swamp habitat. As discussed in further detail below, under 617.7, subsection C17, hazardous human health. At the request of the Planning Board, following discussion held during its regular meeting on December 4, 2023, where the Planning Board's consultants AKRF Incorporated, AKRF, was present to discuss the 2021 and 2022 subsurface investigation prepared by the applicant's consultant, TRC, and the November 1, 2023 TRC submission/scope of work. AKRF prepared a scope of services, revision to TRC's scope of work, to complete an additional soil and groundwater investigation at the site. Between January 30, 2024 and February 1, 2024, AKRF directed a subsurface investigation at the site that included the excavation of 17 test pits and the collection of 17 soil samples, one from each test pit, and 2 groundwater samples, one from each of the 2 existing monitoring wells for laboratory analysis, including a comparison of all samples collected to the 6 NYC RR Part 375-6.8 subsection B, residential and protection of groundwater soil cleanup objectives, or SCOs, and New York State DEC ambient water quality standards and guidance values, or AWQSGVs. The investigation included a sampling plan that achieved coverage over the full extent of the anticipated limits of disturbance for the project, plus 3 down gradient locations identified as TP10, TP12, and TP13, where surface water would have the potential to discharge onto the south adjacent property containing a portion of the Great Swamp. The results of AKRF's 2024 subsurface investigation concluded that the laboratory results were consistent with previous investigations, which identified residual compounds being present in shallow soil due to the historic use of it as a vehicle scrapyard and/or background conditions. The detections were not indicative of a release of contamination, and there was no evidence of site conditions that would require New York State DEC spill reporting or be subject to a remediation-related New York State DEC enforcement action. It should also be noted that as part of construction, the applicant intends to excavate to bedrock, removing all overburdened soil within the anticipated area of disturbance. In a letter to the Planning Board from New York State DEC, dated April 1, 2024, discussed further below, New York State DEC stated that the SEOs found at 6 NYCRR subpart 375-6, quote, are used when a site is part of a remedial program administered by New York State DEC, such as the Brownfield Cleanup Program or State Superfund Program. ... This property is not part of a New York State DEC remedial program referenced above, and therefore the SEOs do not apply. Based on the information provided, New York State DEC does not have jurisdiction to require the applicant of any particular SEOs at this time. New York State DEC has no other comments. New York State DEC makes the determination to apply the protection of ecological resources, SEOs, when a release of contamination has been documented, and when that release has shown through the appropriate investigatory process that the existing contaminant plume impacts or threatens to impact an identified ecological resource, such as the Great Swamp. The results of AKRS 2024 investigation documented that there was no evidence of release of contamination at the site, there was no contaminant plume in groundwater on the site, and no evidence of off-site migration of the compounds that were detected. Based on the results of the investigation, there is no evidence connecting the conditions at the site to any off-site contamination scenario. Does any members of the planning board have any questions about that? No. All right. The project will not result in, quote, the creation of a material conflict with the community's current plans or goals as officially approved or adopted. Nothing changing there.
The
Attorney Polidoro?
showed up, if you scroll down, for some reason the footnote is above the actual citation.
I think this should be its own paragraph.
Which part?
So it says the applicant has, we're at the bottom of page 7 on the document. The applicant has provided evidence of
Oh,
its
yeah.
community.
Yeah, the space must have disappeared. That should go
Okay.
down. Thank you.
That should be,
Its own heading.
right. And that's the footnote
Yes.
here and here matches up fine. Okay. Let's go back up a little bit here. Okay. So the project will not result in, quote, the impairment of the character or quality of important historical, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources or of existing community or neighborhood character. Nothing is added there from what we have already written. Other than that, there was 2 additional public hearings that were held on April 1st, 2024 and April 15th, 2024, as you can see in the footnote at the bottom of page 7. All right. Okay, the project will not result in, quote, a major change in the use of either the quantity or type of energy. Nothing added for that.
There was just a footnote added to that sentence, the first sentence on the page that has the funny spacing.
Oh, okay. So that's the 4 there, and then the footnote at the bottom of the page.
Yes.
For it. All right, so like I said, a little bit of back and forth here. All right, very short, I'll read the whole thing. The project is an electrical substation, the purpose of which is to help control the flow of energy on the existing transmission system between the New York and New England regional power networks. The project will interconnect with the existing transmission system via new overhead 345 kV lines, tying into the Con Ed 395 line, which is an existing 345 kV electric transmission line located immediately north of the project site and Cricket Hill Road, aka County Route 26. All right, so I'm going to just see if this works. This might work a lot better. It's on the next page. And then all right, well, that one's not going to look perfect then.
We'll fix it for you.
All right, so then, the footnote, number 4, on this page is, as noted above, the proposed interconnection is subject to an existing Certificate of Environmental Compatibility and Public Need, or CECPN, issued by the New York State Public Service Commission, or PSC. Upgrades within the right-of-way to line 398 are subject to the review jurisdiction of the PSC pursuant to New York State Public Service Law, Article 7, and not the Town of Dover. Okay, so nothing further there. The project will not result in the quote, the creation of hazard to human health. Okay, so then continuing on to the next page under that heading. Following an August 24, 2023, Article 78 court decision vacating the planning board's February 6, 2023 negative declaration based on potential concerns related to the scope or adequacy of the previous environmental assessments conducted at the site with respect to potential for water and soil contamination, summarized in the preceding paragraph above. The planning board directed additional subsurface investigation to address the issues raised in the court's decision. A scope of work for the additional investigation was prepared by the applicant's consultant, TRC, and submitted to the planning board on November 1, 2023. At its regular meeting held on November 20, 2023, the planning board discussed the August 24, 2023 Article 78 decision and voted in favor of hiring Scott Taylor of Taylor Environment Incorporated, or TE, as a third-party consultant to assist with the review of subsequent investigations and / reports related to potential subsurface contamination at the site. At the request of the planning board, following a discussion held during its regular meeting of December 4, 2023, where the planning board's consultant AKRF Inc., AKRF, was present to discuss the applicant's 2021 and 2022 investigations and the November 1, 2023 submission / scope of work, AKRF prepared a scope of services, revision to TRC's scope of work, to complete the additional investigation at the site. On December 4, 2023, representatives of the applicant, AKRF, and TE inspected the site to determine access and to confirm measures to complete the investigation. After review of a draft scope of work first submitted by AKRF to the planning board on December 18, 2023, and discussed among the board, TE and AKRF during the planning board's regular meeting of December 18, 2023, the scope was finalized and resubmitted to the planning board on January 3, 2024.
Oh.
Something to fix?
Thing disappeared.
No, just repeated, that text is repeated. It was supposed to it was about the access. So
Oh,
that
that's-
paragraph can be deleted.
That's weird. Okay. Oh, it's doing.
Yeah, it should go from the January 3rd down to then to talk about the January 12th letter to
Right.
DEC.
So how do we delete this text that is
Yeah, it's
persisting?
It doesn't want to go.
It doesn't want to disappear.
I'll highlight it, we'll get it.
All right. I can't even click on it. Can I?
It's supposed to be there, so.
Right.
It doesn't know it's there. Trouble is it's highlighting too much.
Something else. That didn't help.
It's too much.
All right. So, for members of the planning board, this bit of a sentence should not be there, and we will, I don't know, maybe we got to hire a computer consultant to have to fix this, but we'll figure it out. All right, continuing on January 12, 2024, the planning board chairman submitted a letter to Kelly R. Totoro, regional director of New York State DEC Region 3, seeking New York State DEC's feedback on AKRF's proposed scope of work and requesting guidance from New York State DEC as to the appropriate SEO to analyze contaminants found as a result of the investigation. In a response letter from Ms. Totoro dated April 1, 2024, New York State DEC stated that the SEOs found at 6 NYCRR subpart 375-6, quote, are used when a site is part of a remedial program administered by New York State DEC, such as the Brownfield Cleanup Program or State Superfund Program, ... This property is not part of the New York State DEC remedial program referenced above, and therefore the SEOs do not apply. Based on the information provided, New York State DEC does not have jurisdiction to require the applicant of any particular SEOs at this time. New York State DEC has no other comments, end quote. It should be noted that the commercial/industrial SEOs were selected in the 2021 and 2022 investigations completed by the applicant's consultants, as they are applicable to the classification of the site as well as the proposed use. AKRF's final scope of work for the investigation included a comparison of all samples collected to the 6 NYCRR Part 375-6.8, subsection B, residential and protection of groundwater SEOs, and the New York State DEC ambient water quality standards and guidance values, or AWQSGVs. I need more water. Please. Between January 30 and 2024 and February 1, 2024, AKRF directed a subsurface investigation at the site and included the excavation of 17 test pits and the collection of 17 soil samples, one for each test pit, and 2 groundwater samples, one for each of the 2 existing monitoring wells. Thank you, thank you, thank you. For laboratory analysis. In addition to the representative from AKRF conducting the investigation was overseen by the town engineer and representatives from TE, the applicant, and TRC as environmental consultant for the applicant. TRC collected split samples on behalf of the applicant for independent laboratory analysis. The investigation included a sampling plan that achieved coverage over the full extent of the anticipated limits of disturbance for the project, plus 3 downgradient locations, TP10, TP12, and TP13, where surface water would have the potential to discharge onto the south adjacent property containing a portion of the Great Swamp.
Mr. Chairman, the next little paragraph is
Same thing.
another remnant of
Yes.
track changes issue. So
It
it
was
just,
deleted and-
that's weird. Yeah, so we
We'll get
had
that fixed.
track changes, and as they were accepted, I guess some remnants of things were moved around, just don't want to disappear, so
Yep. Okay.
skip that one.
So, continuing on. On March 1, 2024, AKRF submitted to the Planning Board and TE a draft of the Subsurface Investigation Report, or SIR, documenting the work completed between January 30, 2024 and February 2, 2024, and summarizing the laboratory results of all soil and groundwater samples taken from the site. The SIR documented that subsurface materials at the site consisted of approximately 6 inches to 2 feet of dark brown topsoil with intertwined roots and organics, underlain by up to 4.5 feet of brown to light brown sand with a varying mixture of silt, clay, and gravel, which is collectively overburdened glacial deposits. A dolomitic marble bedrock was encountered in each test pit at depths ranging from 1.25 feet to 5.25 feet below ground surface. No evidence of contamination, examples being staining or petroleum or solvent-like odors, were observed. And no organic vapors were detected while screening the soil with a photoionization detector, or PID, during logging and sampling. Overburdened groundwater, which is saturated soil above bedrock, was not observed in the test pits. Laboratory analysis of the soil samples identified that a site-related volatile organic compound, or VOC, was detected in one of the 17 samples, and semi-volatile organic compounds, or SVOCs, were detected in the soil samples at concentrations below the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, or New York State DEC, residential use and protection of groundwater soil cleanup objectives, or SEOs. One PC compound was detected in one of the 17 samples, with the total PCB concentration being below the residential and protection of groundwater SEOs, and pesticides were not detected in any of the soil samples. The anticipated suite of naturally occurring metals was detected in the soil samples. Cadmium and or copper were detected in 3 of the 17 soil samples at TP1, TPX, and TPX. We want to get some clarification on those. At concentrations that exceeded the residential SEOs but were well below the protection of groundwater SEOs. The cadmium detections were consistent with rural background concentrations as determined by a New York State DEC and New York State DOH rural soil survey. And that has a footnote, which I'll read now. The footnote is a document on the DEC's website. The copper detections in 2 soil samples were considered to be associated with past vehicle scrapping, where electrical wire and radiators were removed for reclamation purposes. No VOCs, SVOCs, PCBs, or pesticides were detected in the groundwater samples. 4 metals: barium, copper, lead, magnesium, and or zinc, which would be 5 metals. So I'll put 5 metals. Were detected in the groundwater samples at concentrations well below the New York State DEC ambient water quality guidance values. I'm not reading that acronym again. No other metals, compounds were detected in the groundwater samples. And again, we have a little remnant there again. The March 1, 2024 subsurface investigation report was reviewed by TE, and in a letter from TE to the planning board dated March 8, 2024, it was stated that, quote, TE observed that AKRF staff followed the approved subsurface investigation scope of work. TE observed that AKRF staff followed industry and regulatory standards while completing the subsurface investigation. The March 8, 2024 TE letter included 2 comments. First, it was noted by TE that 2 butone 1, it'll help there.
Butanone?
Spelt B-U-T-A-N-O-N-E.
Butanone.
Butanone, thank you. It's late. Detected in TP17, quote, may be attributable to natural processes, and TE agrees that this chemical was not released during historic land use. Second, it was requested that an additional analysis of the TP1 soil sample for cadmium and copper be completed following a synthetic precipitation leaching procedure, or SPLP, to help, quote, understand the mobility of these metals in the environment. On March 12, 2024, AKRF submitted to the planning board a revised subsurface investigation report, which was unchanged with the exception of the additional SPLP analysis of the TP1 soil sample requested by TE. The soil sample from TP1, which contained the highest concentrations of cadmium and copper, were tested for leachable metals using SPLP to determine the potential for the metals to, quote-unquote, leach from soil during precipitation events into solution and eventually into groundwater. As presented in the SPLP results, leachable cadmium was detected at a concentration of 0.96 J micrograms per liter, or parts per billion, and leachable copper was detected at 8.4 parts per billion. The quote-unquote J flag was, with the cadmium result, indicates an estimated concentration that was lower than the reporting limit of the laboratory method. New York State DEC has not promulgated criteria or guidance values for SPLP results. An established process for understanding SPLP results includes comparison to 10 times the value of the New York State DEC AWQ SGVs, which is based on additional dilution that would take place in groundwater or surface water as part of the natural leaching process. The SPLP results were not only below the 10 times value, but they are below the direct AWQ SGVs for cadmium, which is 50 parts per billion, and copper, which is 200 parts per billion, even without the dilution. As mentioned in the summary above, the total cadmium and total copper soil results were also well below their respective protection of groundwater SEOs. The SPLP results support the conclusion that the detected metals are not anticipated to migrate at a level that would impact groundwater. March 12, 2024 subsurface investigation report, including the requested SPLP analysis, was reviewed by TE, and a letter from TE to the planning board dated March 26, 2024. TE concurred with the AKRF's assessment of the requested SPLP analysis. The results of AKRF's 2024 subsurface investigation concluded that the laboratory results were consistent with previous investigations, which identified residual compounds being present in shallow soil due to the historic use as a vehicle scrapyard and/or background conditions. The detections were not indicative of a release of contamination, and there was no evidence of site conditions that would require New York State DEC spill reporting or be subject to a remediation-related New York State DEC enforcement action. It should also be noted that as part of construction, the applicant intends to excavate to bedrock, removing all overburdened soil within the anticipated area of disturbance. Through the SIR, AKRF recommended that the applicant prepare a soil materials management plan, or SMMP, to be implemented during earthwork to identify the proper handling, stockpiling, stockpiling, characterization, and off-site disposal of all excavated material, the SMMP. Will also establish contingency measures in the event that unknown tanks or unknown pockets of contamination are encountered during redevelopment. Review and approval of the SMMP by the town's consultants will be required prior to any future final approvals on the proposed project, and implementation of the SMMP during construction will be required as a condition of any future approvals on the proposed project. Any members of the planning board have any comments or questions there? Okay. And then, as you can see, there's nothing else that is new beyond that.
I can add I have a correction for the reference to those TP with the X in them.
Yep, hold on. TP-X. There we go.
Yeah, it should be TP1, TP5, and TP15.
1, 5, 15. Thank you. All right, I'm going to save this at this point. All right, any members of the planning board have any comments or questions on this document? All right. All right, I'm of the opinion that members of the planning board should read through this thoroughly, along with all the reports of our consultants, and that this document has been, to my satisfaction, fully read. I will not be reading it again in the future, and that we will continue this at our next meeting with votes on the negative declaration, and then ultimately the project. Planning board members, thoughts, comments, questions? Nope. I think it's important that we take 2 more weeks for due diligence. Attorney Polidoro, anything to add there? Okay. All right. Planner Werner, anything further?
No.
All right. Engineer Berger?
No.
Geologist Taylor?
No.
Thank you. All right. This is the applicant's application. I don't know if you wanted to say anything or say nothing.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Javed Anzali, Harris Beach, counsel for Transco.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to mention that we have the SMP ready to go for your review. You can submit it, tomorrow or at some point. We'll work with Victoria to let us know. And again, thank you everyone for your efforts. You started the second part of this project back in November of 2023. You guys have done a tremendous job in doing the hard look. You did the hard look in 2023, and you've done a diamond level look at this point with respect to the issues raised by the court. And we appreciate all of your efforts and the consultants' efforts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. With that, seeing nothing further with New York Transcode or Electric Substation, our next scheduled meeting is June 3rd, 2024. The deadline for that has passed. To be very clear, we will be talking about Transco and voting on Transco-related items at our meeting on June 3rd, in case anyone thinks they need more advance notice than right now. Anything else that we've received for May 15th?
Mr. Rosciano's extension.
Right. Yes. Okay. And not anticipating that Sherman Hill Road 2-family would be back for June 3rd, but likely would be back for
20th.
June 17th, based on what we get back from the county. Okay. All right. So then, as I said, the agenda for the June 3rd meeting will be Transco and Mr. Rusciano, and then maybe, escrow release or something like that. And then and we anticipate having a meeting on June 17th, likely for Sherman Hill Road 2-family, or anything that's received in the next 9 days by the deadline.
That's right.
Any further business before this planning board? Seeing no further business, I'll make a motion to adjourn, seconded by Member Valano. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.